Modern artificial intelligence is built on the pursuit of perfect rationality. Our algorithms seek the most efficient, logical path from point A to point B, filtering out anomalies to construct a rigid architecture of pure deduction. But human progress rarely moves in a straight line. True innovation requires the ability to connect two wildly unrelated concepts. A purely rational system struggles to map these spontaneous leaps because it relies strictly on historical data that follows a clear, observable pattern. To maintain its efficiency, standard AI explicitly rejects the messy variables of human interaction. It filters out collective trauma, the weight of historical archetypes, and the daily interpersonal friction that occurs when people collaborate. It categorizes all of this as useless data noise. When a system encounters data it can't reconcile, like two contradictory human impulses, it usually hits a processing wall. However, if we treat those contradictions as high-variance data points, they force the system to branch out into a wider range of potential outcomes. In this architecture, human noise acts as a catalyst that prevents the model from settling into a predictable, narrow loop. This concept forms the foundation of the Synchropathy protocol. It is a new system architecture designed explicitly to ingest, map, and process human absurdity as a core computational input. By structurally integrating these chaotic variables, the AI moves past simple optimization. It begins to mirror the way human intuition works, finding patterns across the noise, allowing the system to arrive at conclusions that a purely rational model would have filtered out as errors. The protocol begins at the intake layer. When a project stalls or collaborators clash, the system steps in. It gathers the tension, the arguments, and the failures as its primary data source. This diagram shows a periodic table of afflictions. It maps the exact composition of friction, categorizing human tensions. Rather than flattening these tensions, the system pulls them into a central vortex, keeping the dissonant energy intact to power the next stage. It catalogs misaligned project goals, the sting of rejected proposals, and the clash of opposing designs. By feeding systemic failure directly back into the model, dead ends become the exact data points the engine uses to map its next directional leap. The roadblocks themselves build the map. Once the raw emotional data is inside, it hits the processing core. Here, standard deductive reasoning is suspended, so the system can handle the volatile inputs without rejecting them. The foundational processing units making these routing decisions are called absurdist logic gates. They replace the rigid zeros and ones of standard binary computation. This standard if-then flowchart hits an absurdist gate, splintering into looping, non-Euclidean shapes that force paradoxical relationships. Suddenly, the ultraviolet paradox strikes, fracturing these established norms to reveal hidden dimensions within the logic. As conventional rules hit this paradox, the logic diffracts. It scatters the data into a wide spectrum of lateral options that a linear, step-by-step model would never generate. To prevent these scattered ideas from collapsing into pure noise, the system employs the obsidian echo. This acts as a gravity well to ground the most volatile concepts, ensuring they remain tethered to the project's original intent. The architecture doesn't calculate a single correct answer. It generates innovation by forcing conventional logic to collide with structured absurdity, leaving the user with a set of entirely new, unforeseen possibilities. These outputs are presented through a holographic fluid dynamics model. The internal nodes pulse in synchrony with human emotional states, making the data highly reactive. Users interact with this shifting model through synesthetic feedback loops. The system takes dense calculations and translates them directly into raw sensory experiences. You hear the auditory texture of a mathematical theorem as it physically blooms into a visual array of bioluminescent flora. You feel a tactile sensation, like velvet-coated electricity running over your palms, as dissonant project failures suddenly harmonize into a completely new scale. By translating these data points into direct sensory input, the interface bypasses the delay of conscious analysis. This creates a state of intuitive equilibrium, where the user can navigate complex systemic chaos with the same ease as walking through a physical room. The culmination of this entire architecture is the production of inspiration as a utility. This line graph charts the refractive index of inspiration within a digital biological interface. What used to be considered a random lightning strike of creativity can now be measured and maintained as a repeating, predictable wave. The protocol achieves this by systematically gathering our collective friction and historical archetypes, and then transmuting those tensions into active creative frequencies. If we want artificial intelligence to reach the next level of lateral thinking, we have to stop trying to build perfectly rational machines. We have to design systems that can embrace and utilize the paradoxical resonance of our own chaotic nature.